Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Coach Gerald Lami podcast. I will bring you content with some of the best sport personalities around the world, sharing their journey with listeners and inspiring the next generation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my special guest for today, Michael Hamilton. Welcome, Michael. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for the invite. It's a privilege. Thank you.
No, brilliant. Thanks for coming on. Obviously we're in unprecedented times at the moment. How are you coping in these times?
Yeah, pretty much like everyone. We closed down on the 13th of March, and
Yeah.
straight away we got thrown in, and I'm proud to say by the Tuesday we had a schedule of sessions happening with the boys, with the parents, with the staff. So collectively, it's been a good effort from everyone at AFC Wimbledon to make sure in these difficult times we keep in touch, keep developing, keep moving forward. But those Zoom sessions and interactive sessions kind of came to an end last week. So now it's just about planning for next season and making sure we start next season, whenever that may be, in the best place possible.
Mhm. No, it's interesting. I think that's important in terms of like just keeping connection with the kids. I think I saw a letter today. I don't know if it's official from Manchester United, but in terms of just the interaction that they have with their players, and they were just saying basically just be yourself for the next couple of weeks or for the half term, where you can just play games and maybe eat something that you wouldn't eat, because even for kids, like for some of them they might not really comprehend what's exactly happening. And for them, it's just autopilot. But then there'll be a lot of kids that will be affected just like adults. So, it's important to keep that connection with the players.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The go-to is probably physical sessions and stuff, but there are other ways to develop away from here. So we're trying to develop the person behind the player. So even just getting them to go and research matches and do match reports, or read books and do development reports. Like there are other ways away from the physical training that we can develop. But like United
Mm-hmm.
have kind of highlighted, it is an interesting, very unique time for everyone, and there's also an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
for people to maybe just switch off and not focus on the
Yeah.
football, and just like you said, go and be a person, go and be a boy, which is kind of where we're at the moment. We just said to boys, look, go away. We'll touch base in a couple of weeks. If you've got any problems, we're here. But just go and enjoy yourself, and kind of take ownership of your own development now.
No, for sure, I agree with you. It's very, very important. But if we go into a bit of your journey of what you're currently doing, and the lead up to what you're currently doing as well.
Yeah, no. So obviously, I'm academy manager at League One side AFC Wimbledon, and I've been here since 2008. So I've almost seen every area of the club, and I became academy manager last season in September. But if I go back to the beginning, as a young coach coming up, pretty much similar to everyone else. I done my level one, then my level two, got my coaching experience in schools and community clubs, and I wanted to break into the academy, which was then at the time Centre of Excellence systems. So I was very fortunate enough to get an opportunity at Millwall, who were at the time hovering between League One and Championship. And I was with the younger ones, so the nines, tens, 11s, 12s, with the foundation phase group. And I kind of realised from early doors, look, I'm going to have an opportunity in this very tough industry. I'm going to need experience with the older boys. And it's not necessarily that I think it's important you have to work with the older boys. It was just more a case of me wanting to vary up my experience and step outside my comfort zone a little bit. So I approached Wimbledon at the time, who were a non-league club, and I said, look, I'm more than willing to volunteer my time as long as it's with the older age groups. So from 2008 to about 2011, I combined my role with Wimbledon with my roles at Millwall. So at Millwall, I was still doing the nines, 10s, 11s, 12s. And at Millwall, I assisted the 18s, plus I'd done an age group, so I might have done the 12s, might have done the 13s, might have done the 10s, so I just helped out where needed, really. And that was the case up until 2011, when Wimbledon got promoted to the Football League. Now, obviously, you can't work for two Football League clubs due to conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So it was at the time Wimbledon said, look, if we go up, there's a full-time job here. So the club went up. They beat Luton in the National League playoff final in 2011, and I left Millwall. And since then, I've been full-time at Wimbledon. At the time, I was looking after the football and education program, as well as assisting and supporting in the newly set up academy. Um, you know, this was Wimbledon was a very big grassroots side, and its step
Hmm.
into
Yep.
academy was a massive step. So, having been one of the few people with academy experience, I kind of had a bit of an inkling of what to prepare for. But as you can imagine, it was new to everyone. So I was here, there, and everywhere, just trying to support the program. And I've developed in different roles really. So yeah, under 18s assistant, oversaw the football and education program, which kind of at the time it almost ran alongside the academy as another potential recruitment opportunity and to give boys a second chance. Um, then I became lead youth phase coach, which in academy UK terms means I looked after the development of the under 13s to under 16s in the academy, preparing boys for potential scholarships that would then progress into under 18s. And I've done that up until 2017, which I then became the academy head of coaching, which means I oversaw the coach development program and the player development
Hmm.
program in the academy. And I held that role up until last year, um, September, October. And since then, I've become academy manager.
Hmm. Wow. So you've pretty much seen, club growing, and you've grown within the club as well. And even the fact that something that stands out to me, of course, your growth throughout the club and still being there just shows the type of work that you're doing. It's valued at AFC Wimbledon. But before that, when you contacted them and you said you're willing to volunteer now. I've got a lot of coaches that message me. I'm sure you got loads of coaches that message you in terms of opportunities and things like that. And, they feel like by just sending a message to say, can I come, to do bits and pieces and etc. How important is it for coaches to understand that the voluntary side of coaching is vital and, and part of your journey, especially if you're coming from like a non-league sort of background or, that sort of background.
It is vital, and there are lots of people with the qualifications and the right qualifications, and they seem to think that's going to be the end. But, nothing beats
Mm,
experience. You can go on the courses you want, but if you've got no experiences, then how do you know what you're doing? How do you know what you're doing works? Can you use different coaching methods? And so what I would say to everyone and anyone is, the more experience you can get, that it's paramount. And like you said, if I go back to my journey, I was at Millwall doing the younger boys, and the money I got probably just covered my transport to the session. The money wasn't great; it was a per session rate. And then I done the same at Wimbledon, and I was combining two part time roles together. And at the time, I was having, I was due to have my firstborn, so my daughter was being born. And trust me, the income from the two part time roles wasn't going to be enough. So I actually had to get a night job. So
mm-hmm,
my day would look at Wimbledon. I'd be at Wimbledon from about 12:31. Training would start at 2. Training would be planned to finish at 4.
mm-hmm.
Leave straight away. Have to get for meal for 6. Session 6 to 8. Leave session at 8, and I'll go and do my night job at like 11, 12 o'clock at night. And that would go through to the morning, and then we go again. And
Wow.
what I'm trying to say is, just to keep my foot in the door and to
Mm,
keep my foot in the two clubs, I had to do more to make it work. So experience, volunteering, going the extra mile. To me, there's no other way to it. You either want it or you don't. And trust me, if I gave you my phone and my email for 24 hours, you'll be shocked at the amount of people that contact you, wanting an opportunity, wanting to
mm-hmm,
I've got this badge, I've got this experience, and they assume that's definitely going to be
mm.
an in. and it's not as easy as that. So what I will say, alongside keep learning, keep developing, is go and get those experiences and those learning opportunities. Because you never know what can happen from it. Someone, like myself, I didn't ever think I'd be managing the academy. Um, but if you go back to the beginning, I had to offer my time for free, and I think that's a message to anyone.
No, for sure. And just in terms of, because one thing as well, you really got to love what you're doing to do that as well in terms of the voluntary things. Where did the love begin for you in terms of coaching? Was it something that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, unconsciously, yeah. So I played, obviously, like any other player or boy growing up. You probably dream of being a footballer,
Mm,
but looking back, I wasn't good enough to be a footballer, and I wasn't doing enough to be good enough to be being a footballer. So I played non-league, played at a few grassroots club, but looking back, I was nowhere near doing enough to be good enough.
mm.
But alongside that, I really and I didn't even know what I was doing, but like I used to be like obsessed with Championship Manager, Football Manager, and
Me too.
I'm a massive artist. Yeah, trust me, the amount
Yeah.
of hours I've wasted. It's not wasted. It's
Oh, mate.
very productive hours, but yeah, like I'll
Which
go
one?
to
Which
school with
one?
no
Which
sleep
one was you
and stuff
playing?
like that. Anyway, as soon as they come out, I had it. Trust
Which
me.
which
As soon as it came out, so anyone.
Because, oh, mate, I remember I used to skip school certain times just to play that game, and I'll just pretend to my mum, and I'll be
Yeah,
like, "Oh, mum, I'm not feeling well." As soon as she's gone to work, championship manager's coming on. I remember it was, back in the day, it was just the dots. You
yeah,
couldn't really
yeah,
see it, or not even the dots. It was just the writing. It was just writing that will pop up on the screen. That I think it was 90. I think it was 2000. That one. I think that was the one.
yeah,
2000 championship manager
yeah.
2000.
Yeah, I would have been the same. And I went on it a couple months ago, and trust me, it's nothing like how it used to be. But like you said, I used to skip
No, of
school. I used
course.
to homework and
Mm.
schoolwork got put to the side. But what's interesting is looking back, I never felt, I when I was always like the smaller club. Like I'd always take like a League One, League Two club,
Mhm.
or a club in the second division
Yeah,
and
yeah.
try and build them up. So unconsciously, just
Mhm.
little things like that. When I look at what I do now, it kind of all aligns. I'm
Mm.
a massive Arsenal fan, and I always used to like
Mhm.
write down on paper who I'd buy and who I'd sell, and just try and
Mhm.
pitch a squad. And I didn't even know what I was doing, but looking back now, it all kind of makes sense. Um, so no, I've always had a
Mhm.
passion for football, massive passion. Um, you know, and not just English clubs, Spanish, Italian clubs. I was obsessed. I had all the Merlin and Panini sticker books. Um, And once I
Mm.
realised that I wasn't going to be a footballer, I suppose coaching was the only answer, really. And I've been in it ever since.
Well, before we move on, though, we need to finish this championship manager talk because when you said that, you just brought back my childhood. What is the best season you had on championship manager?
Oh, I had a very good. I remember having a Deportivo side. I remember having a Deportivo side, and
Ooh, okay.
I used to pride myself on like not just winning, but also being in the green at the end of the season. So like just
Mm.
scouring the market for freebies
Mhm.
and little gems. Um, so I had a very
Mm.
good Deportivo
Mm.
side, which I took to La Liga title and Champions League. Um, but
Decent.
yeah, yeah.
Who did you have?
Listen,
Diego Tristan, was it? Them times?
yeah, yeah. Tristan,
Ooh, okay, okay.
Dejamino, um,
And Valeron?
yeah, Valeron. At the
Valeron? Was he in your team?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sure, yeah, you took it back.
At the time, the Scandinavian market was quite. So you had like Marcus Allback, you had Henrik Pedersen,
Mm.
like you had all these little Scandinavians that
Mhm.
would you'd bring in for like a couple hundred grand and sell on for like millions.
Nah, mate, what a game, man! I remember I had one season. Who was that? I think it was West Brom. It was West Brom, and I was doing the buying the old players. So I was buying like Canu and them sort of players to West Brom, and even though he did move to actually West Brom afterwards, funny enough. So I was buying them sort of players, and I took them to the Champions League, and I think I lost the Champions League, but then I quit it before it saved. and I went back on it to so I come in the Champions League. I'm
Yeah,
sure you've
I've
done
done
that
that
a
a few
few
times.
times
I
as
hold my
well.
hand up.
But yeah, no. So it's interesting. So you like you said, without even thinking it, like you was kind of building like a foundation for your coach and your manager and a sort of like a philosophy for yourself as well. Like so, in terms of your philosophy or coaching, as you've got older, you've gone through your badges and you've experienced a few things. What would you say your philosophy is, and does it go hand in hand with you being at Wimbledon?
Yeah, I think yeah, our philosophy and my philosophy is completely player centered. It's got to be completely player based. I work in the development phase of the industry, even though I think development never stops. But as an academy, we have a role, a massive role, not just with the player but also the person, to really maximize potential and maximize growth, and that goes beyond the pitch. So my philosophy is trying to develop the person behind the player and trying to give the player as many different situations, challenges, both technically, tactically, as well as psychologically and physical, to enable them to become the best player possible.
Mm-hmm.
How that looks is playing players in different positions and sharing game time in different positions, playing right-footed players on the left, playing left-footed players on the right, putting them in the middle, and just getting them to view the game with all different angles, all different perspectives, so that as they progress through the age groups, their decision making, their skill set is a lot better. And yeah, everything we and I try to do is player centered, and trying to maximize the personal growth of that player.
Mm. No, it's interesting. So, like, just in your opinion as well, I'm sure you're more on the development side of things. But I think winning is something that, especially in academies, I'm not sure whether they emphasize on it too much, especially the development phase. But in terms of you, do you feel developing a winning mindset is more important than a youth development versus technical development?
Winning always matters, always. And I think, like you said, I think it's kind of become an ugly word. But winning matters,
Mm,
and that should never be taken away. That's the essence of sport. That's the essence of football. However, I
hmm
think what we can do as coaches is redress how we look at winning. So we look at winning as attacking your goals, being the best you can be, coming to every session and making sure you get the most out of it. Doing everything you can
hmm
do away from the pitch. So being a winner in life, and if I believe if you focus on that process, the outcome will be you will win. So I think you can dress up winning. I think you can redesign it. However, like you're saying, that I don't think it should be a word taken away from development. But if I'll give you a couple
mm
of examples. So if I don't know if me and you are sprinting, and
mm
I know you've got potential to be the quickest sprinter in the group, but maybe me at the time you know, I've got potential to be the fifth or sixth fastest sprinter. Then there's no point me trying to be, even though I want to try and beat you.
hmm
How you will dress up winning is, well, Michael, what if you finish fourth, and then when I finish fourth, celebrating that. And then when I get to fourth, let's try and finish third. Whereas with you, if you're the fastest in the group, then my method with you would be to be the fastest and stay the fastest. So I think how you dress it up and the angle at which you approach it can look different for different individuals. But no, definitely winning matters.
No, I like your mindset in terms of, and even the words that you use and redesigning it, and like using the word winning mentality isn't taboo. And I think, again, I think some people like kind of push that word to the side, where, like you said, it is part of the game, and but it's the way we kind of present it to the young players is important. So no, I love the way you just broke that down. It's very, 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 very good, to be honest with you. um but in terms of, like, of course, AFC Wimbledon has a lot of challenges in terms of other clubs around the area, the district, or even in London in general, to be honest with you, in terms of recruiting players. And what do you guys look for in terms of recruiting players? What sort of attributes is it? Is there a certain style that you guys look for?
The first one is I think is physicality. You know, you need someone who's a good mover, who's able to get around the pitch. Um, and once they've got those core, ABCs, I think you can then potentially start building on top of that. But physicality. When I say physicality, I don't mean big. I don't mean strong. I just
Mm,
mean movement.
hmm
I mean mobility. I mean agile. Um,
hmm
and once they show that athletic potential, then it's about the person or the player being able to be a good learner. Are they able to come in and take on board information? So you might have someone in the building who is a good player and is physically good, but isn't a learner. The information goes in at a certain pace, and you might bring in someone up from the outside who might not be as good as a footballer. However, they're a very strong learner. They grasp information quickly, and that's not to say that there isn't a way to teach everyone. I do believe everyone has the potential to grow and everyone has the potential to learn. But the most important attributes we look for is movement, physicality. When I say physicality, I don't mean size or height. I mean just like general ABCs, and the person behind the player. The ability to learn and to grow. Because if you've got someone who's always willing to learn and grow, then the potential is limitless.
No, for sure, for sure. And how do you guys kind of deal with having, clubs like just around you guys, maybe the Fulhams, etc., things like that? How do you guys kind of beat that sort of competition to
It's
maybe
difficult.
recruit certain players?
Yeah, no, it's difficult. I mean, we are probably the smallest club in the area, no doubt about that. But London's a big place, and there are places for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's about being in the right places and looking beyond the norm and trying to be creative with how we approach things. One thing that costs nothing, forget resources, forget facilities. One thing that costs nothing is environment and people and making people feel like they're part
Mm-hmm.
of something. So we're massive on making people feel that Wimbledon is a story that they want to be attached to. And we've had boys in the past who have turned down your bigger clubs to stay at the club, and that's because they felt like they was part of something, they was going somewhere. And the football club is not an old club. It's still a baby in terms of age. They're moving to a new stadium next season. We're playing. We're currently playing in League One, so the pathway might be a little bit more realistic or quicker than a Premiership club, as an example. So those are the things that we try and get people to see and go, look, we could be the first step to your career, or we could be the step in, and you start with Women for Life, and you carry them through the league. So it's difficult, but our story is unique. Um, and we feel like we've got a great environment, we've got very good people, and those things cost nothing. And everything we do, I was actually just on a Zoom about half an hour ago before I jumped on with you, and we were talking about our environment and how we're going to model that. And we've got great learners in the building in terms of staff, and we've got people with a growth mindset who want to keep pushing forward, and that feeds down to the players. And you can't really measure that.
No, for sure. In terms of what you said, in terms of environment, which is critical now, especially for players, and I think, to be honest with you, I think that mentality is slightly changing, where players are just going for the name brands, should we say, and going to bigger clubs, and like you said, having an opportunity to be in an environment where you can develop and have an opportunity to go into first team football. I think you guys have got something special there, and like you said, the people within the club, Anthony Ferguson, which we spoke about before as well, like he's an incredible man with a lot of knowledge within the game. So to have someone like that within the club, for most young players, yeah, I would definitely recommend to be in such an environment personally. Anyway, I've been around young players where they've had options to go to the so-called bigger clubs, and sometimes you do have to bet on yourself and be confident that you can make it. But sometimes you have to think as well, is realistically, what are the chances of me going through, and especially looking at whatever clubs that you will be going to, checking their track record of youth players is important. But I definitely feel like it's changing as well, in terms of that for sure. Um, and
Yeah,
also something that I wanted to speak to you about was, in terms of coaching as well. Why do you think it's taken England a bit of time to develop that new way of coaching? And do you think it is getting better?
I think it's getting better. I'm fortunate enough to to go on CPDs and courses that are run by the FA. And I do think, as from a coach development perspective, you know, I've been fortunate enough to go to other countries, Spain, France, other countries, and have a look at how they do things. And I think our coach development model is up there with the best. And I think in the last, I'll be honest, and these are my personal views. If you go back 10, 15, 20 years, I do think our coaching was behind our European counterparts. I really do. You know, you had coaches who came to this country and could speak two, three, four, five, six different languages, and then you had English coaches who they thought it
Mm,
was okay and good enough to just to speak the one. So you talk about relationships and communication. Well, the person who can speak multiple languages and have got that experience working in different countries, they're probably going to have that upper hand. Um, but I do think that's changed.
mhm,
I think the coach development program in this country is amongst the best that I've seen, and I think we're starting to see that with the quality of coaches that we've started to produce. There's nothing wrong with competition, and I remember when Wenger first come to Arsenal, and people were like, they're quite disrespectful about him, if I'm honest. But how many new methods and how
mhm,
many things
mhm,
do we do in this country that is because of him? And not only that, how many different markets
mhm,
was he able to tap into because he could speak different languages? And I think that's kind of become. I think that was a bit of a flashpoint in English football, because before then we had a lot of unsuccessful foreign managers, and I think he was the real first one that said, "Hold on a minute." And I think the rest of the nation and the rest of the game is kind of cottoned on and caught up.
mm, No, I agree with you in terms of Wenger. He definitely changed that outlook, especially in the top tier of football, the Premier League, and you hear a lot of players speaking about that as well. But just going back to like something like within myself, I'm sure you've experienced this as well. But growing up with my managers, it was really old school, where if you make a mistake, they're on you. They're going to be shouting at you, or your parents are shouting at you, etc. Things like that. For you, I can hear that, in terms of your learning, just your outlook in football in general, you see things in a bit of a different way. But how important is it for players to make mistakes, and how do you deal with those mistakes as a coach?
When you first get into a car, I've never known someone who the first time they ever step into the car, they can drive. I remember my first driver lessons, and
Hmm.
I think the same principles apply to football and anything. But for some reason, we seem to think the rules don't apply. So we look at players, and as soon as they, like you said, they make a mistake or they can't do something, we jump on that instead of looking at the fact that they're in their process. They're trying to work it out, and they will make mistakes, and we should encourage mistakes. Of course, there's got to be learning there, and they've got to be seen, they've got to be clear signs of development. But we've got to
Hmm.
not make people scared of mistakes, and we've almost got to turn the mistakes into lessons, and learning opportunities. And I think if you do that, you'll get and you support along the process, you will tap into the potential into that player. You spoke about old school managers, and you know
Hmm.
one thing that's been communicated about modern academy football is a lot of these players, they aren't resilient. They can't take negativity.
Hmm.
And but I suppose the question has been, but by taking away those old school traits and those old school managers, have we then started to produce players that, yes, they're better in these areas, but at the same time they're not developed in other areas. So I think it's about trying to find new methods of keeping your old values. And we say old values and old coaching. You know, in the history of football, in the history of sport, and I think these will be paramount forever is, hard work, grit, resilience, determination. Those ugly words, that they're still relevant today, and they're going to be relevant tomorrow. And if you use Liverpool as an example, for all they can do on the pitch, for all their flamboyancy and their creativity, and their their attacking skills that they show. Trust me, they work hard. They're very resilient. They
Mm-hmm.
roll their sleeves up when they need to. They put their foot in. They put their head in. And they're also the hardest working team in the Premiership. So um,
Mm-hmm.
I think coaching's about tapping into the potential of the player, getting him to realize, or getting her to realize, that mistakes is part of the journey, and mistakes shouldn't be frowned upon. Mistakes should almost be supported, um, but making sure they understand they are part of the process. However, getting them to understand at the same time, there are also other traits that are going to be needed. Um, so you talk about resilience. Jurgen Klopp lost 6 cup finals before he won the Champions League final with Liverpool.
Yeah,
Liverpool lost the
yeah,
Champions League final
yeah.
2 years ago. If they weren't resilient and they weren't determined, trust me, they're losing the second. They're probably not even get to the second final, let alone winning it. But so
Mm-hmm.
those ugly words and those characteristics, they're still paramount in top flight, in top level sport.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you said something there as well in terms of in terms of the new culture methods that we might be developing less resilient players. But do you think as well that environment that these young players or people are growing up in, everything's so instant where they could just get everything within a second, even when it comes down to like deliveries or literally everything's instant. Do you think it's also the environment that has created that sort of mindset?
Yeah, like you're saying, yeah, everything's at a tap of the fingers for them, and it is
Mm,
right here, right now. If they want to feel good and they want to, a compliment or something, well, it's right there at the fingertips. At the same time, there's also a lot of negative stuff right there. So what that probably has done is probably develop players who think they're welcome to more than what they actually are. Think they're a bit ahead of their time, 15, 16, 17, think they should be the first team. So what we probably indirectly have produced is, a bit of urgency and a lack of patience. However, that is the world. And, it's instead of moaning about it, and instead of going, oh, but yeah, why do they do this and why do they do that? Listen, the world's changed, and I think coaches, you have to change and evolve, with the times. And I'm not saying you forget your values. I'm not saying you throw everything you knew out the window and start again. Not at all. But I think it's about balancing who you are as a person, what you're able to offer as a coach, but also recognizing there are different ways to communicate and interact with players. And that'll be the same in 10 years, 15, 20 years. Um, but at the same time, it's so important you remember who you are.
mm. No, for sure, for sure. So in terms of you, who are you like watching, and who are you looking up to in terms of, learning new things, just picking their brain in terms of culture and lifestyle, just in general? Is there anyone in particular, or a few people that you look up to?
Yeah, in this time off, I had the privilege before of meeting Eddie Jones. He's the England national coach here, and he's like the Pep Guardiola of rugby. So I was fortunate enough to go and visit England training and meet him, which was a great experience. And I find his methods and his qualities so insightful. So in the time off, I've tried to listen to podcasts and learn a little bit more about his methods. He's seen as a bit of a madman, but he definitely has the best interests of the players at heart. And his mantra is he wants his development program to be so good that he can make himself redundant. So when it comes game time, his players and his team don't need him. Because all the work's been done.
Mm,
So I definitely think as a football coach, we can do a lot of learning from other sports and other environments, and that's one I've tried to
mm.
do. Um, Obviously, in football,
But
you go back a few years, I was a massive Arsene Wenger
yeah.
fan, um, but then Mourinho came and he made it a lot more about tactics, and I found that
Yeah.
fascinating, and that's still,
Hmm.
whether you disagree or agree with some methods,
Mm.
the guy's a serial winner. Um,
Do you think he's still
and
got it?
yeah, I think he's still got it. Um, you got to remember he only won the league 3 years ago. So when people talk about him
Mm.
being a dinosaur, I
Yeah.
think it's a bit disrespectful because
Mm.
even listen at United, I know people have their view on him, but he's still bringing 2 trophies in 4 years. So in terms of winning,
Mm.
um, there's very few better winners than him.
Mhm.
But Jurgen Klopp at the moment, I think Jurgen Klopp is the guy. Um,
Mhm.
in terms of environment, you can definitely see all the players and staff at Liverpool feel like they're a part of something. So that goes back to the point we spoke about earlier with regards to environment, and being a people person. And Bielsa is very interesting. I've been watching a little bit
Yeah.
of Leeds, and you know their work rate and the way they play and set up against teams and make teams uncomfortable. And I found him very interesting. I was speaking to one of a player that I knew, or no, sorry, a player that I know who played against Leeds this
Mhm.
season, and just trying to get an insight
Mhm.
into what it was like to play against him. So you can never not learn really, but I do find a lot of the most interesting and insightful bits come from sports coaches in different realms.
Mhm. Mhm. Now it's interesting that you're diving into different sports as well, because there's a lot of football coaches that just strictly are doing football analysis or trying to learn from football coaches, which is fine. But it's interesting. Why did you go into the different sports to learn?
Just because I think it's important to always look for evolution and new ways to improve. And there are so many methods and processes and procedures that that can be learned from different sports. And ultimately, when you get to the elite, when I say elite, I mean like top 1% of all
Hmm.
sports or all successful businesses. That there are similar behaviors and similar characteristics that run throughout. And so I think there's a lot of learning to be had there. I'm a massive I'm a combat sports fan, so I'm a massive like UFC boxing
Hmm.
fan as well. So I
Hmm.
find the individual sports mentality very interesting because ultimately you're stepping into the ring, and the person you're up against could be willing to kill you to win. You can't
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
more elite or animal instinct in that. So in terms of the psychological side and looking at methods to bring across into football. Yeah, listen. I still try and keep relevant to football, and I was on a webinar yesterday with Jesse Marsh, who the Red Bull Salzburg manager, and it's
Okay.
fascinating.
Yeah.
But I think it's always interesting to look beyond. Like everyone's watching Last Dance at the moment. Michael Jordan,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and unconsciously people you're learning. Unconsciously that's a CPD
Hmm.
right there. And
Hmm.
I think elite sportsmen or elite businesses and elite environments, I think there are similar behaviors across.
Mm. No, for sure, I agree with you.
Gerald, sorry, one
Eh,
thing before
so, can,
sorry, I've got a question for you.
can you hear me? Yeah, go
Yeah,
on, mate.
Pep Guardiola. He's got a he's got a member of staff that he uses to measure
Hmm.
and develop and test his environment. I'm not sure if you've seen All or Nothing, but are you aware of what
Yeah,
I'm?
I've seen that one. Yeah, yeah, I've seen All or Nothing.
Yeah, and the guy that he's got, uh, do you know what sport he's from and what he's done?
I think not swimming or netball or something like that. That's his right hand man, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's water polo.
Water polo, something like that. Yeah, 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 yeah,
He's a gold medalist, and you can't really get more
yeah,
elite
yeah, yeah,
than a world
yeah,
level
yeah.
Olympics. So you know that's a similar method there, where someone's looked outside of football to bring it into football.
No, for sure. And even I was reading something. Funny enough, I'm reading Pep's book at the moment, the evolution, and he talks about the chess player, which is the number one chess player. I think he's from Russia or something like that. I can't remember the guy's name now, but
Sparrow?
he's like close friend. I think so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Gary Kasparov. Yeah, yeah, that's his name. And just in terms of Pep's thinking, is like, look at that. He's going into someone that's involved with chess, and there's a lot of similarities, of course, like chess and just life experiences. and it just shows that you got to be multidimensional in terms of learning, being flexible with your learning, going to different sports, and that's something that for me personally, like you said, you're a big combat sports guy as well. And for me personally, I'm a huge fan of UFC, boxing, even like tennis, things like that. And I feel like, personally as well as a coach, I need to dive into that world a bit more in terms of the coaching side, and rather than just looking at it as a entertainment thing. So, it's definitely, like you said, going into the rugby side of things and learning things the way they do. I'm sure you'll bring a lot of that stuff over to your coaching methods as well.
Yeah, you say tennis. Roger Federer is in terms of sportsman. You don't get really more dominant and elite than him, or you golf
Mm,
Tiger Woods. Who had to lose it all to come back again. So the mindset to be number one as a kid, to lose it and then to come back again, like that's how interesting and fascinating is that. So there's so much
mm.
to learn. There's so much to learn from different sports and environments that carry over to football.
No, for sure. No, I just love the way you're thinking, and just in terms of your evolution as well as a coach, and just learning new things from different things. What's the future hold for you going forward?
Well, I'm new in my role, and I'm enjoying it. It's a different challenge, and a different experience, and one that I didn't really think it wasn't really on the agenda, but it's one that I'm grateful for. So I really want to focus and get into that and make sure we as an academy are the most productive academy we can be. We're only little Wimbledon, but we need to change that mindset and try and make sure we're amongst the most productive academies in the country. And then beyond that, I just want to keep developing, keep learning. Having visited different countries and different cultures, and football being a very worldwide sport, that's definitely interesting. But no, just keep developing, keep moving forward, keep evolving, and who knows? But at the moment, I'm really focused on the job here at Wimbledon.
No, I love that little bit where you said, little Wimbledon, but we need to change that mentality. Which, just speaking to you in this 40 minutes is really inspiring, and just the way your mentality is in terms of, again, just developing and evolving. I'm sure you guys will develop as a club, and I'm sure you as a person will develop individually going forward. And I just want to thank you again for taking your time out to come on the podcast, and I wish you the best of luck going forward.
No, thank you so much for the invite, and thank good luck with this project. It's a great thing that you're doing. Tapping into other people's knowledge and experiences and sharing. So I think you deserve a lot of credit, and it'll be good to do one in the future as well to see where we're at.
No, for sure, for sure. We'll definitely get another one going. Thanks, Michael.
Gerald, thank you so much.